All right. Horace Wu, thank you so much for joining for our very first product briefing. Effectively, you are our guinea pig, but I hope that's not too painful. I'm
Yeah.
going to I'm going to start off by asking you to tell us a little bit about yourself and how you started Syntheia, your company.
Sounds good. Thank you, Nikki. It's a pleasure being your guinea pig. It's going to be a lot of fun. So Horace Wu, founder and CEO of Syntheia. I used to be a transactional lawyer, did private M&A and banking law for over a decade. And around about 5 years ago, I left the law to try my hand at running different startups. And so Syntheia is my second startup, the only one in legal tech, and I got into it by accident. A friend of mine at the time needed some help understanding what leases are for his NLP company. So I helped him out. And at the end of that, I was like, well, you're solving the wrong problem. This is the problem you should be solving. So I wrote him a business plan and then accidentally got to build that business myself.
That sounds exciting. How long ago was that?
That was Christmas 2017, I think. We were having a coffee in Strathfield in Australia. I can even tell you the coffee shop. Don't go there. It's terrible.
I'll find out from you afterwards and avoid it. Now, I know because we know each other that Syntheia is very powerful technology and that it has been developed to address a number of different problems and therefore represents actually a suite of products effectively. But the product we're talking about today is the Syntheia Supercomparer. Can you tell us a little bit about what the Supercomparer is and the problem that you set out to solve with this particular product?
Yeah, absolutely. And as backdrop, I'll tell you a little bit about the kind of basis problem that we're solving at Syntheia. So we started off by identifying that there was a problem that lawyers have in finding information. And this is transactional lawyers who need to find stuff inside of contracts that they've worked on before, that the firms worked on before. And the way we wanted to solve that was to create a really reliable database of clauses that are automatically extracted from these millions and millions of contracts. And then from there, you can run analytics over it and so on. So having created a few tools that use this data, we started talking to a firm who wanted to use the data in a really interesting way to help them identify differences between lots and lots of contracts to then figure out where the risks are, what are the variances and so on. And in the building of this, what we realized was, well, what we're effectively doing is we're doing a sort of red line version 2.0 type software, right? Instead of doing one-to-one comparisons between two contracts or pairs of contracts, we can do a one-to-many analysis or even many-to-many analysis between a whole suite of stuff to then identify where are the differences, how are they different, what are the risks, where are the variations. And so from there, we created this tool that's able to break contracts down clause by clause, rearrange them by the meaning of the clauses and the operational clauses, and then tabulates the outcome so that the equivalent clauses from all your documents are all lined up in a row in a table, and lawyers can very quickly see and identify the risks and departures.
That sounds very interesting. Can you tell us a little bit more about the use cases? And I know this is a relatively new product, but what types of things are people using this product for?
Yeah, so the use cases that are coming up in our conversations, the first one is, okay, let's say I am working for a borrower, and I have all of these different banks that are a syndicate. They're giving me different terms. I want to find out who's the most favorable and so on. Load your contracts up into there. You'll have everything lined up, even if it's drafted in different language in different places of the agreements. It will then be lined up so you can see, okay, these are my most favorable. You can do things like most favored nation analysis when you're doing funds deals, so that you load up all your side letters. And if someone has a term that's not seen anywhere else, it will spring up and go, well, here is the thing that everyone else should also be offered, because most favored nation means everyone else should have this term as well. We're also seeing it being used in kind of multi-doc review, where if you use a traditional due diligence tool, it's able to pull up specific clauses and specific terms. Lawyers are still going back to the contracts afterwards to read those terms. In our case, because we're pulling the full text and putting it all in a table, lawyers can be in our table, see across the whole data set what these clauses are, and be able to review them in the tool without going back to the source documents. So those are some of the use cases we're seeing for this tool, but really it's a multi-purpose tool. It's doing a lot more than we intended when we started creating it.
Yeah, I can see huge applicability. Do you have a particular target demographic in mind? Is it law firms, predominantly corporate legal? Is it small law, large law?
So we started this by targeting big law, but what we have found after showing it to a few people and a few potential customers, it's applicable to essentially any lawyers that need to run comparisons. And that, I think, is most transactional lawyers, because what a lot of transactional lawyers do is they leverage past work and say, well, I know this is the work I've done before, and therefore it's reliable. I know the content. Let's now run it against the new documents to see what I have to pay attention to. And so we're seeing in-house counsels using this as well. And what we are planning at the moment, and we're not quite there yet, is we're planning to also release this as a SaaS offering standalone that even small firms can sign in and just use on a case-by-case basis.
Oh, I love that flexibility. And last question, Horace, before we move into a demo.
Yes.
What differentiates the Supercomparer from other tools on the market? What makes it special?
Yeah, I think it's creating a new category. And there are two categories that are quite close to what we're doing. First is redlining, and we're quite different from redlining because we're doing more than redlining. You can compare documents even if they started from very different forms, whereas redlining, you're sort of constrained because if they're all jumbled up or if they're drafted very differently, it's all reds and blues. You have to read the document in full anyway. And the other that this is sort of competing against is your traditional extraction software. And where we're very different is, one, we don't need any pre-training. This works out of the box using a BERT-style model in NLP, so it understands the text, it's able to realign and kind of draw equivalences. And also it's complete. So even if you don't have pre-trained models, we're extracting the full text. So if there is a clause that's not matched anywhere, traditional software will leave that in an empty bucket. We capture it and show it to the lawyers.
Wonderful. Horace, let's jump in and see the product.
Let me share my screen and I'll show you what this does. So we have a landing page, and in the landing page, you can see we allow people to go and create different review tables. Now, because we're doing a demo, I did prepare something beforehand. And the way it works is you go into this wizard, you select a workspace, which is essentially a database of the contracts you want to look at. And then it asks you, well, which ones do you want to compare? And in this case, I can choose 5, 6, 7, as many contracts as I want to then compare.
So no limitation to the number of documents you can choose.
No practical limitation. I mean, the hardware limit is about 4,000 documents, but we have yet to encounter a law firm to say, yes, I want to compare 4,000 documents simultaneously. And then from the next screen, you can then choose whichever document you want as the base or your benchmark. So when you click next, it will then go and create the report. Now, this happens all in the background. It does take a few minutes to do that because you're breaking all the provisions down. So I did prepare one earlier. So while this is running, I can open this variance report, which you'll see in a second, is able to break your first document down clause by clause. And align it to all your other documents. And something you'll see here is it's able to do so and give you an indication of the degree of differences. So for example, lease of premises and lease of premises, they're very similar. So it's colored in green. Things that are further apart, so for example, term of lease here is drawn equivalences to what are the most similar provisions in the other documents. So this setup is allowing you or allowing the lawyers to see the most similar in every single case. And here's a good one, right? Property taxes. You can see it's drawn equivalences to taxes, to additional rents, and to covenant to pay taxes and assessments. But because they're quite different to begin with, taxes are colored in green, covenant to pay is in yellow, additional rents in red, but it's always showing you the best match in each case.
Horace, can I just ask, up at the top, I see a little percentage. Is the first document shown alongside the benchmarking document the one that is most similar to the benchmarking document?
Very, very good question. So we do allow people to see these percentage of similarities. And what you're seeing there is here, it's saying each document from a document to document comparison level are this similar. You can actually align it to go least similar to most similar. And you can in fact do that on a clause by clause level. So property taxes, I can reshuffle documents in that way. So this is how you can see the variations between different documents or different counterparties to identify the potential risks.
And what are the other percentages that you have on the clause level labeled M, D, and B?
So I'm showing you the administrator view. So most users will not see these numbers, but the administrator view allows the power users to actually measure the differences in meaning between this clause and this clause, the differences in drafting, and the blended scoring differences, which are weights the user themselves can adjust in real time to figure out, well, what's more important? Is drafting similarity more important than meaning similarity? So there are multiple machines at work here to figure out how two clauses should be compared.
That's really clever that you're able to show the similarity of meaning or concept as well as the similarity in the actual drafting language.
Yeah, it's powerful, especially if you do stuff like this, where I might go, okay, adjust this, and you can see in real time, it's changing what appears. So I'll put it back to the way it was. But yeah, it's a really powerful tool.
Fantastic. Now, and from here, how can users manipulate it?
So a few little features I want to show you. First of all, of course, you can save the report. You can show red lines for every single clause. So now you have red line reports, and you can now export this as an Excel spreadsheet with red lines. So lawyers can export this whole document with all the track changes. The three documents I chose here are extraordinarily different to begin with. So you will see it's all reds and greens, reds and blues, which is the problem with red lines to begin with. And that's why we have the coloration in the background to indicate, hey, what should you be paying attention to? And that's why you can switch this on and off as well.
It's wonderful. It allows lawyers, I imagine, to also look at, as you say, where should I be paying attention in a negotiation, for example?
Exactly. And you'll see when I scroll down to the bottom, these are all the clauses which exist in the documents you're comparing against, but did not exist in the benchmark. So additional rents, not in the benchmark. So we've put it at the bottom to make sure you never miss it.
That's very clever, Horace. Thank you. Is there anything else we should know?
Oh, so much, but not enough time to see it today. So hopefully that was a good glimpse into what I think is a new category of software. And hopefully, it sparked people's imaginations.
Horace, I think this is a really exciting development. I can see how useful this will be to so many lawyers and law firms and likely corporate legal departments as well. Thank you so much for showing it to us, and thank you for being part of the first ever LTH product briefing.
Thank you, Nikki. It is a joy, and I hope you have a happy new year.
Thank you very much.